All right, seventh grade. Today we are going to look at our last lesson in topic 4. So this is 4.6, distance on a number line. And we're going to continue using those integer rules we've been talking about for adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers and rational numbers. But when we are looking at distance on a number line, we are going to take the absolute value of the difference of those numbers because we are going to strip away the information that tells us which number is greater than the other and which is less. And here's what I mean by that. We are just going to look at some example problems so that you can get a feel for what this is going to look like as you're practicing it on your homework tonight. So on number 1, when it says find the distance between the numbers 4 and 3/10 and 8 and 5/10 on the number line. So let's first think of this on a number line here. Not not a perfect number line, but we get the idea. So here's 4 and here's 8. So 4 and 3/10, that's going to be about right here, a little less than halfway between 4 and 5. And 8 and 5/10 is going to be halfway in between 8 and 9. So let's label these so that we know what they are. Okay, I want to know the distance between these points. So I'm not going to attach any information that tells me that 4.3 is less than 8.5 or that 8.5 is larger than 4.3. I merely want to describe this distance, this value right here. So that's why we're going to use absolute value. So what we're truly going to do are take these two values and subtract them and take the absolute value. And we can do that in, see if I can slide this over. It's not going to all stay together. All right, I will work over here then. So we're going to take the absolute value of 8.5 minus 4.3, and that's going to give us the distance. So when we're dealing with two positive numbers, taking the absolute value of our answer isn't going to change anything because absolute value is always going to turn our value positive. But when we get to some of these other examples, you'll see how the absolute value bars will actually affect our answer. So just remember that anytime we're looking for a distance on a number line, our answer should always be positive. So I could do 8 and 5/10 minus 4 and 3/10. So the difference between 5/10 and 3/10 is 2/10. And the difference between 8 and 4 is 4. So this is a difference of 4 and 2/10. But I want to also show you that because I'm using the absolute value bars, I could also rewrite this problem as 4 and 3/10 minus 8 and 5/10, because when I put it inside of my absolute value bars, it doesn't matter that I end up with a negative answer because my absolute value bars are then going to turn it positive. So if I start at 4 and 3/10 and I subtract 8 and 5/10, then I'm going to be going in the negative direction 8 and 5/10, right? So think about if I'm starting right here and I move back 8 and 5/10, that's going to take me to the left of 0, so into the negative numbers. So I'm going to go all of 4 and 3/10 back, and then I have another 4 and 2/10 to go. But when I take the absolute value of negative 4 and 2/10, I still end up with positive 4 and 2/10. So in that way, we are describing this distance here, but giving you no information about which value is larger or smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and move this down so we have some fresh space to work. Okay, so let's check out number 2. Suppose an airplane is flying 11,000 feet above the ground. Another airplane is directly above at 38,000 feet above the ground. How far apart are the airplanes? So my answer is just going to tell you the distance that these airplanes are apart. It's not going to tell you which one's higher and which one's lower. We're merely finding the distance. So we are just going to do the absolute value of 38,000 minus 11,000, and that's going to give us our answer. So in this case, 38 minus 11 is 27. So the airplanes are 27,000 feet apart. Okay, on number 3, however, you'll notice that we're looking for the distance between negative 407 and 275 on the number line. So to find the distance between these, it might help us to think through this with an actual number line first. So I'm starting at negative 407. And I want to find the distance between this number. So let's count roughly in hundreds here. Negative 300, negative 200, negative 100, 0, 100, 200, 300. So I'm going to extend this a bit for us. Okay, so if this is negative 407, then let's say that 275 would be maybe right around here. So think about this. Negative 407 is 407 units from 0, and 275 is 275 units from 0. So I'm taking these two values and I'm combining them if I want to know the distance between them. So what this is going to look like is I'm going to take my values, negative 407, and I'm going to subtract 275 from it. Notice that is going to give me a negative number, but that's okay because I'm finding the difference between these two, or the distance between them. So what I'm truly doing, if I use my integer rules, is I'm subtracting with a negative, so I'm going to use same, change, or add the opposite. So if I do same, change, I keep negative 407 the same, and then I change the minus to a plus, and I change 275 to negative 275. Now I can just add my two numbers and keep my negative sign because I'm adding two numbers with the same sign. So my rule is add and keep the sign. So 407 plus 275 would be 682. And I'm going to keep that negative sign. However, I'm going to take the absolute value of that. So it comes out to be 682 would be the distance between these numbers on the number line. And keep in mind, we can visualize this because I know that this is a distance of 407, plus I have this distance of 275. So when I add those two distances, I get 682. All right, hopefully we're starting to get a feel for this, but let's try another one. I'm going to move this down so we've got some more room to work here. All right, let's work in green for number 4. So Mishka dives from a platform that is 10 meters above the water. Her dive takes her 2 4/10 meters below the surface of the water. How far does she dive? So if I want to think of a picture to help me, she starts up here, and this is 10 meters high. This is the water level, so this is 0. And then her dive takes her 2 4/10 meters below. So she is traveling all of 10 and all of 2 4/10. So to show this mathematically, I could take the absolute value of 10 minus -2 4/10. Or if you're thinking of it simply on the number line, you know that she's diving 10 meters because she started 10 above the water, and then she went another 2 4/10. So essentially, I'm going to add 10 plus 2 4/10. But as I look at my equation here, or my expression, I'm doing the absolute value of 10 minus -2 4/10. If I use my integer rules when I'm subtracting with negatives, I'm going to do same, change, change. That would give me the absolute value of 10, stays the same. The minus becomes a plus, and -2.4 becomes positive 2.4. Or if you like to think of subtraction as adding the opposite, then I start with 10 and I add the opposite of -2.4, which is positive 2.4. So either way, we get to adding those two numbers, which is 12.4, and the absolute value of 12.4 is still 12.4. All right, let's check out number 5. Which of the following expressions represent the distance between -4 and 7 on the number line? So let's think about first, what is the distance between -4 and 7 on the number line? All right, here I am at 0. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And here's -1, 2, 3, 4. So from -4 to 0, that's 4 units. From 0 to 7, that's another 7 units. So 4 and 7 is 11. Okay, so this distance, those are 11 units apart, right? But let's think about how to show this using our absolute value to demonstrate this distance. So I could take these two numbers in my absolute value bars and I could say, okay, -4 minus 7 and take the absolute value. So let's use my integer rules. I'm subtracting with negatives, so I'm going to do same, change, change, which would make this, I keep -4 the same, I change the minus to a plus, and I change 7 to -7. Now I'm finding the absolute value of -4 plus -7. I have same signs, so I'm going to add and keep the sign. 4 and 7 is 11. They're both negative, so my answer is negative. And the absolute value of -11 is positive 11, which we also found and showed on this number line. So this is one way of writing this. Let's see, here it is. All right, it took me a second to find it. So this is one way of showing that distance, but let's check these others out and see which of these others represent that same value of positive 11. So let's look at the absolute value of 7 plus 4. 7 plus 4 is 11, and the absolute value of 11 is 11. So this would also be equivalent.